Welcome to the Point of View Show. My name's Andrew Tran. I'm your host. This show highlights business professionals in Asia and around the world to get an understanding on what makes them effective, how they do it, and advice to help you grow in leadership, branding, marketing, and sales. For more information, head over to my website, www.andrewtran.asia. Before we get into it, smash that subscribe button and click notifications whether or not you're listening or watching this. It helps me a ton and it helps other like-minded people find these episodes a lot easier. Now let's get on with the show. My next guest is Francis Goh. He is the founder and CEO of Hehsed, which is a consulting group based in Singapore with a focus on digital transformation and innovation through design thinking and agile scrum practice. He has over 20 years of international experience working in industries like technology and the energy space across Asia, Europe, and the US, holding key senior regional roles for companies like ExxonMobil, Hewlett-Packard, Fujitsu, SAP, Microsoft, and many more. Our conversation focuses on his consulting group, specifically around digital transformation and how he works with his clients on developing innovative strategies through various frameworks and techniques. So without further ado, give it up for Francis Goh. Francis, we're on. How's it going?
Great. Thank you for having me on. It's a privilege to be able to speak with you on some of these interesting topics and very passionate topics of mine.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming on. For anyone who's watching or listening, like Francis Goh, he's got this amazing background with 20 years of international experience working across Asia, Europe, and the US, and multiple industries in key senior roles. And the brands go on and on. But I guess with anything, right? When you switch brands, when you switch industries, when you switch roles, you have to morph into something of yourself, right? Into a different beast, so to kind of make sure like you're working through. And so I guess my question is if you had to morph into anything, into an animal, what kind of animal would you morph into?
Well, I think I will pick the eagle, mainly because the eagle signifies many characteristics that I admire, and I am trying to have them more and more. For example, first of all, the ability to have that kind of freedom. In fact, my name Francis has a component of the meaning of the name has a component of freedom as well. And I think it's important for me to be able to have the freedom to do what I want and the liberty to do that. A couple of other characteristics, like the eagle is extremely tenacious and fearless. Therefore, I do adopt an attitude of taking reasonable and calculated risks, especially in the area of innovation. You need to be able to, what risk to take and dare to take that risk to advance forward. And then the eagle has a very good, strong vision. And finally, the leadership quality of eagles, they nurture their young throughout. And I spend a lot of my time coaching young people, startup founders in my spare time these days.
Yeah, and also for anyone who's watching or listening, you also do some stuff with the university in Singapore as well, like kind of helping various kind of brands and businesses and students coming in. That's cool. Eagle is really nice. I've chosen eagle before. I think for me, it would be more likely to be an ox right now, because I'm just in this grind. I'm just pushing through, and I just got to have that temperament, but also the kind temperament, but also the temperament that needs me to kind of get up in the morning and get through. So yeah, I like the eagle, man. It's really, really cool. All right, so moving forward, I like where this topic is going to be talking about. We're going to talk about digital transformation and innovation. And one of the first questions I wanted to ask you as a CEO, as a consultant, both working as a, from client side perspective and also now as like a bit of an agency side or consultancy side perspective, when you work with clients and when clients have asked you to digitally transform their business, what are some of the first few questions you ask them in that initial stage?
Well, I'll be staying on a lot on the why. Why are they doing this? In every aspect of that, I let them listen. I do a lot of listening in the first phase, absorbing the foundations of the why the situation they are in right now, why the businesses they have taken them through, why have they expanded here, why have they done this, and why did they want to talk about getting through to where they want to. Let them articulate the way they see the vision of their objectives of the digital transformation. Truly understand why, because I would be able to understand a lot of their organization, the intricacies, their strength, their areas of potential pitfalls, and also potential opportunities that are from all this articulating the why. So I'll be staying on the why of a long time at the beginning.
Yeah, nice. And during your initial stages, when you're kind of, I guess, diagnosing their situation at the moment, how long would a typical consultation take with that client? I know it depends, but typically, how long would it take?
Well, yeah, you're right. It really depends how mature they are at the point in time when they have brought me into the conversation. However, it usually I like quick wins, meaning that in a couple of conversation, maybe one or two, and they of course, and if depending on the C-suites, the level of the person I'm speaking to, or rather the person also have more information or clarity, or are in position of authority to decide, then a couple of conversations will be able to suffice to understand where and why. Therefore, pinpointing exactly which transformation areas first. And I always believe that transformation is not just a C-suite acting alone. Of course, directionally they provide a lot of directions, but they need levels of people to work on. And I would often go into a workshop style, having groups of between 5 to 10 relevant people in the workshop to work specifically on agenda, to walk out from a workshop understanding these are the three things we want to do, and maybe a little high level why we want to do that and how.
Yeah, nice. And would you? Okay, so I want to talk. I want to touch on that a little bit later because we want to talk about like kind of innovation and some of the techniques around like design thinking and new
Yeah.
methodology around that, which is really cool. Just to kind of finish up on digital transformation, like most of your, I mean, a lot of your clients are Asian based, and so I guess for me, it's like, what are some of the things you're seeing when it comes to digital transformation for Asian based organizations?
Well, I think the this next couple of decades, Asia is where the actions will be. I've heard it a lot even since about 2 decades ago or 15, 20 years ago. Asia has been thriving and thriving more and more. Now, with the emergence of the superpower China coming into play, we all know what China will be doing, and there was even a sort of a prediction that by 2028, China will overtake US as the largest economy, right? So Asia is where the action is in the sense of the emerging economies, the way how the governments as well as the interplay geopolitical positions with the neighboring China. I think there's a lot of actions in terms of growth and opportunities in Asia. Now, certainly the pandemic has brought up even far more opportunities. Although it has its downside, which are obvious, a lot of businesses and livelihoods have been destroyed or impacted. But at the same time, from the organization perspective, it is a positive thing in helping organizations understand that they have to transform digitally even far more faster. In fact, one more thing it really even helped is that the mindset of people are able to adopt the change far more due to the impact of the pandemic. Take it for an example. Previously, a lot of organizations have not been relying too much on having, let's say, digital conferencing, platforms. They do that maybe 10% or 20% right now. Now, with the pandemic, we all know that at certain period of lockdown, it was 100% dependence on the platforms. And after the pandemic, we see that there are going to be a huge uptake of these digital video platforms for communication, and those communication tools are even far more important right now. People are getting more comfortable. The skeptics were being converted, so to speak. People who didn't want uncomfortable with digital platform, they are now very. But of course, by no means there are certain categories of meetings cannot be replaced by a video call, like having a relationship, meeting somebody in person. After the pandemic, I think we will have a fair amount of that back in the normalcy. But I think a lot of these typical or general meetings can be replaced by quick video calls. And so with that respect, it has moved the whole world towards faster in adopting digital technologies due to the mindset change of the people in general.
Yeah, you brought up a really interesting point. Like the adoption needs to kind of occur not from like a C-level point of view, but everyone coming in. And also, one of the things that I kind of see as well, like with the adoption here, the digital transformation coming through is, that investment, not only for technology, but also for platform. And you're also seeing an involvement in terms of how people communicate digitally. So previously, like with webinars or with face-to-face type of events where you would have a talk for 40, maybe 15 minutes plus Q&A, now you're seeing that trying to translate that over to digital and having it much, much shorter, like having it about 20, 25 minutes with a Q&A. And the reason being is because we understand through research that the attention span for digital is quite short, and so it's forced us as a communicator to communicate in a way that gets to a point a little bit quicker, still adds a bit of finesse in terms of storytelling, getting that point across, but everything needs to be just a touch more quicker. And if it cannot be for some reason, like I've had situations where I've had to coach various people in terms of their sales strategy, and that doesn't happen over one session. It requires multiple sessions coming through and short sessions coming through. And so you're having to change that format. So, with regards to the transition and that adoption, I think that's also increasing. I'm just kind of curious to kind of see, like, also with digital transformation, do you also see that as part of digital transformation, especially here in Southeast Asia, is as the adoption of more people using online-based services for e-commerce? Do you think that will also accelerate that adoption for other businesses to use video online for communication purposes?
Oh, absolutely. Not just video platforms as an example that I've given. Everything that's online has spiked during the last 18 months because of this pandemic. You could see from the numbers, right? The e-commerce transactions going on in the last 18 months has doubled. People are forced to buy and procure everything online, versus because some of the malls were locked down in certain periods, right? And people don't want to go outside, fearing the transmission that's still going on in the masses. So now with the comfort level of doing grocery shopping, buying anything online, and also interestingly, the cost of the items or delivery has also been brought down significantly. Overall, the value play of having e-commerce, it's much compelling compared to having spent time, effort, and even the value, the price that you have to pay on the merchandise. So it is a very strong propensity for people now, not in the past, to go online. And in the past, it's because, of course, due to no lockdown, the liberty, the freedom to move around. That's fine. But I think the adoption has surely significantly increased in every aspect of online transaction, online applications.
Yeah. Hey, what's your thoughts on like the tourism and travel industry? Like, how do you think they might have to transform in a sense when it comes to displaying destination points?
Oh, absolutely. So for many years now, we know that even the hospitality and tourism industry, they have moved towards digital transformation by having the information on the palm of everyone. But I think they have to move that a lot quicker. The expectations right now, if you take as a percentage in the past, maybe let's say 50% of the customers would want that kind or demand that kind of service or connectivity. Today, after pandemic, you will see almost 100% of people would be having the expectation to have everything, anything, anytime, real time on their palm. So there's an extremely push now. So it becomes commoditized right now. At every hotel, you have to provide the information to them pre and during and post stay to ensure that they get connected to the information they want at an instant. So there's a pressure a lot about information. And because of that, the CX customer experience starts not just when they land or they step into the hotel, for example. It starts way back when they do their research. So it is extremely important for the hospitality tourism industry to do a really, really good job in ensuring that they present the best view, the holistic view, and a holistic experience for their potential clients.
I like how you just explained all that. It actually reminded me of some things I've said before in my previous guests, but one of the big things is understanding the customer journey and the flow and reestablishing that now that we're in this COVID era where the needs of one or the expectation of one when it comes to awareness, to research, to decision making has changed quite dramatically. And now that's like, how do you implement digital elements to facilitate certain experiences that you would have been able to do through either a touch point, a certain physical touch point, and how do you then kind of move that along to a customer when they're stuck at some point. So I think what you just explained is really fantastic, especially for the hotel destination service-based industries where they're so used to having that physical touch and being like the old adage of, yeah, but once they meet me, it'll be okay. I can sell them anything. But now it's more like, okay, we have to go back. It starts all the way back from the research and then all the way through to the post-purchasing kind of experience and then the actual day of experience. So I think that's really, really cool.
And one more thing just to add, the infrastructure of the hospitality industry also will be moving along, because, for example, there will be an expectation of a minimum or no physical touch point with every interaction. The buttons on the lift, the check-in process, it used to be very face-to-face. In the future, they're going to convert a lot of them to be sensor-based. They use a lot of technology like video analytics, heat sensors, motion sensors to get things done, and that will become a norm as we move forward. And the hotels or the hotel chains that is able to achieve that will get a kind of popularity over time, that they are ahead of the peers in terms of having that kind of services provided. I think that's a significant competitive advantage.
Yeah, and also I think when you break it down, right, strategically speaking, it's all well and good having those no touch points or having technology come into play, but it also comes down to the people that you have, what kind of skill sets that needs to be updated for your existing people, and the processes, because the processes will all have to change. The internal processes in managing the client's needs and expectations to kind of fit alongside the platform that or the technology that you're going to bring on board in order to kind of help digitize, I guess, the entire experience coming through. So yeah, I totally agree. Hey, so moving on, like I wanted to touch on about innovation, right? And one of the big things that I like to talk about is design thinking and the methodology behind it. And so I guess my question is like, why do you think that design thinking is the design thinking methodology is important when it comes to creating innovative solutions?
There are two reasons why design thinking is so popular. First, that it is a very simple yet powerful framework for people to understand and use. So simple meaning is a five-step process. It's easy to understand the tools, the process around each of the phase to help to bring about an innovation from really identifying the problem, the ideation to building a prototype and test. Now, second one is powerful because it has been proven, right, that this simple process it does bring about a good outcome. Now, this is the first. The second reason is that it can be used at all levels of the organization to come up with this innovation, from people who are the first touch point to managers or even the C-suites. They can use this simple framework to work together across silos team, especially more advantageous to do that, to come out and identify the problem, the outcome base. At the same time, what I like about this is an iterative process during the innovation design thinking to allow people to go back to the previous stage, understand what they had done, and the learnings from the future stages will help them to really reinvent better, and it ultimately come out with a solution for the problems that they have identified.
Nice. And this next question touches on to the previous kind of statement you talked about before, and the question I asked you before with regards to, when you work with a client for the first time and they've asked you to kind of digitally transform their business, some of the initial questions, and you're going through the whys, and you mentioned that some of the ways of techniques that you do it is through a workshop, like a design, design thinking workshop, or maybe even a lean design workshop. But when you work through your clients, how do you then implement that design thinking to that initial stage?
So I take an outcome-based approach, meaning that I want to avoid the organizations sending their teams of people to learn design thinking, something that is theoretical. They understand and come up with a solution that is based on a theoretical problem. No. So outcome-based, meaning that I insist of the organization to bring a real problem, a real client problem to the workshop, and start working on that problem. Because when they come up with a prototype and solution, that can be implemented in reality, and you can actually measure results. That's one. Secondly, because you can be implementing these real solutions to real problems, the people attending the workshops are taking it more seriously, because they know that it's not a theoretical workshop. In fact, it's a very, very highly applicable workshop, where they can actually having tangible results, where they are really doing this in the BAU, where they're trying to solve problem, day in, day out, right? But they're just not using the right innovation tool, particularly trying to find a new way to solve an old problem. So both reasons are really, really popular with my clients, and I can guarantee outcome in terms of having prototypes from every team that they send. They will be using the iterative method, and there's no way that they cannot come up with a prototype and test the prototype that works if they are given sufficient time and support and resources to work on the problems that they face.
Yeah. Okay. And typically, like when you run like a design thinking workshop, is that like an all-day thing, or do you kind of follow a little bit of like a design sprint where it's over a few days?
Yeah. So based on the Stanford and IDEO methods, they have three versions. The 5-day version, which is really in depth. We used to use face to face, but and the 3-day version. But because of the pandemic, we have able to customize right now to break down the whole methodologies into chunks of 90 minutes each. For my case, because as you mentioned earlier, the concentration time is limited online to be, I think, optimal at 90 minutes. So I have them between 90 to 120 minutes module, and I'm built it modular over several days, or even several weeks. In between, they get coaching. How do they go about to build that? The thinking around it, the prototypes around it. So it's pretty customized. You can do it within a week or within 2 or 3 weeks. And then, in fact, if they were to build or if they were to tackle a complicated problem, you can even take months, because it is important to take time to do the research, validating assumptions, checking, and doing a lot of cross-checking, sometimes between offices or between countries. To solve a complex problem is okay, even to have a 6-month or 12-month process throughout to come up with a prototype. So it really depends on complexity of the problems and the availability, as well as the teams. If are they working remotely with members from various country time zones or in one location, all this will be influencing the amount of time required.
Nice. That's a good way of doing it. I like how you said, and even you as a consultant has to adapt, right, for the digital
Yes.
kind of, for the digital era that we're in. Quick question, like I'm kind of curious, how do you maintain concentration from your participants when you do those 90 or 120-minute sessions?
So I do a little bit of split about like a 80-20. 20% will be me talking and explaining, let's say, certain concepts, but 80% will be engaging a lot of Q&A, and I do a lot of breakout groups. For example, I use the other tools like poll questions. We do a bit of a competition. We do a bit of a gamification, so to speak. Now, during the breakout groups, I will go to each team, about 3 to 4, and you can see that they are very highly engaged because of a smaller group. They're given a task of a question and come back with some answers concisely. They know the expectations to be this. They're given a very short time. You time bound them to like 5 minutes or 10 minutes maximum per activity. So they really get into it. They discuss. When they come back and someone represent and report their joint views. I know you can see that the high engagement is the answer, and then they don't feel the time that passed very quickly. And when they engage, 90-minute session is very, very enjoyable.
Nice. And do you find for companies who are still in that transition phase of adopting digital through their day-to-day work, and you're giving them a task to do where you break them into a certain room for a 5-10 minute type of period, do you sometimes do like second round type of movements? So the first round is really just to kind of get them used to it, and then the second round is like, cool, this is where we can really start to get some key information coming through. Has that happened to you before?
It does, but sometimes the 2 rounds is still within the same session, because if you set the expectations right, explain it clearly, within the second breakout group, they're pretty comfortable already. And you don't have to come back the second session, so to speak. So within a session, we can just do the second time they go to breakout groups. They should be very comfortable once you articulate clearly the expectations and outcome.
That's great. That's great. And this kind of leads me to the final question that I asked all my guests when it comes to advice. And so with you, Francis, as someone who talks to a lot of C-levels with your consulting group, if you were to talk to a CMO or various other C-suite when it comes to reframing a sales or marketing problem, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I like to bring them back to the fundamental of why are they doing things. I find there's a common problem I see among CMOs, for example, is that while they're chasing and doing a lot of campaigns and programs for their clients, sometimes when I go to the base of asking the question of how are their clients feeling about this, what is the impact on the clients, what has the data been showing with respect to the campaigns that they run, the objectives that they want to achieve versus the outcome, I find that there's a lot of gaps there. So, and even when I ask, have they done a proper customer journey or repeat the customer journey based on, let's say, new technologies being deployed, or based on new expectation of their clients over the years? They often say they have done, but they have not done it for a year now or 2. So I find that they have not paid enough attention in understanding, breaking down the customer journey into really finite details, deliberating enough in each of the touch points to find opportunities, ranking the opportunities based on the risk or the difficulties level of doing it and investment versus the outcome. I find that that kind of discussion is rather remote. So my typical conversation would lead the conversation towards down the road of understanding the outcome that they want based on the corporate objectives that they have, right? From corporate objectives to the marketing objectives. Very importantly, the clients are at the central of the whole discussion, because if they were to please their clients, understanding and solving problems for their clients, they will, in the longer term, understanding the value chain that will achieve the outcome that the company would benefit from: increased revenue, margins, customer satisfaction, or you name it. All these metrics will typically see an increase if you do it right.
That's awesome. Very thorough, very outcome driven. I love it. So Francis, wrapping up, for anyone who wants to reach out to you, what are the best channels to reach out to you by?
Via LinkedIn, email. My email is easy. It's my first and my last name, francis.goh@hehsed.com, or I'm easily found on LinkedIn as well.
Great. And for anyone who's watching or listening, I'll put that in the show notes below. So Francis, thank you so much. And for everyone who's watching and listening, thank you for coming onto the show, and I'll see you on the next episode.